Oh, what could I, lawnmower story. I don't know what story I could tell about Mina. Oh, that story. Oh, I won't tell that story. Mina's an awesome guy, and you know what Mina does at the casinos? And we're trying very hard to negotiate this both at Safeway and at Superstore, is he's something called a walking steward. So we talked the casinos into paying him to being a union rep. And all he does is spend all day over at the Grand Villa downtown casino, representing workers and monitoring working conditions, or over at the Starlight Casino at West Edmonton Mall, representing workers. And the company pays for it, and the reason we got that is Mina stood strong, and the workers there stood strong and stood up and said, we need more representation, and why shouldn't the company pay for it? Isn't that awesome? Pleasure, brother. Thank you for coming. Thank you. I got to admit, now this says 10 minutes, and I understood I had 20 to have a chat with you. So now it's 9:57. I hope I have a few minutes to have a chat with you. My hero was my mom. How many of you had a hero in your life? And I think some of you applied and you told us who your hero was. And for how many of you did you have a hero that was really just an ordinary person? Your mom, your brother, your sister, your dad, or your friend. Maybe you could cheer for me if your hero was an ordinary person. Could you cheer? But you know what we're really saying when we say our hero was an ordinary person is that our ordinary person was an extraordinary person. Isn't that what we're really saying? I'm nervous, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't get nervous when I negotiate with lawyers, and I don't get nervous when I speak at conferences with professors, and they use fancy words that we can all use. You just look them up in the dictionary. It's not that big a deal. I'm nervous because I'm here in front of the people that matter. And I know that some of you are coming up on this stage and you're going to be a little bit nervous too, but that's okay. I'm with extraordinary people. And I've been asked today to lead you down a path where we can understand the word engagement and membership engagement. Now, my mom was my hero, and I grew up poor, like many of you, and disadvantaged. We lived in an old apartment building in the middle of the city, and we never had a car, but there was love in my household. My mother's grandfather was a Polish immigrant arriving in Canada when he got a free little piece of land that he was excited about until he saw it, and it was just the bush, and he built a little mud hut. And his brother went to Chicago and became a packing house worker and had to deal with line speeds and working in cold, wet, and dangerous conditions. He was a proud man. We take pride in our work as union members, don't we? Complex work, bringing food to the tables of Canadians, applying our craft, be it in a retail store, be it in a packing house, any of the other industries that we work in, and we need to take pride in that work. All of you have a profession. Many of you come from the other side of the world. I can't even imagine what it might have been like to travel from another country. There are people in this room that are so much smarter than I am. People who have complex lives, who are global people, who speak 2 and 3 languages. Do you know who you are? I know who you are. You are also my heroes. In any event, I do tend to ramble a little bit. I have 16 minutes and 55 seconds now. Growing up in a disadvantaged family, there was love in my family, and my parents were working people. They were great people, and my mom would go shopping and bring the kids things home, as loving mothers did. And she shopped at garage sales and at the thrift shop and at a place called Army and Navy. I still think Army and Navy exists, doesn't it? Is Army and Navy still around? And she'd bring home a jigsaw puzzle from time to time. And I get this cool 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. How many of you like jigsaw? Anyone like jigsaw puzzles? These are kind of take your mind off things, and you're playing with the jigsaw puzzle. And one night, I was there with her and my Polish grandfather, and we're working on the jigsaw puzzle, and it was fantastic, and it was a picture of Paris, and it was the Eiffel Tower. It was pretty exciting, and we wanted to get this done. And I was reminded at the end about how we were a little bit disadvantaged, because just as we got to the end, the piece for the top of the Eiffel Tower was missing. I said, Mom, you gotta stop buying jigsaw puzzles at garage sales. There's a piece missing in our movement, isn't there? We feel it sometimes. We could do better. I like to read. I was wandering through chapters the other day, and I saw this book. Mr. O'Halloran never uses this word, although I think he squeezed it in. And I saw this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. 60 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list. And I thought, well, that's great. You know, you can just relax and not care. You just want to give up. It's hard to watch the news. The bosses bully us. It seems like we're just running on a treadmill. We're never getting ahead. People are living to pay bills and die, and people are suffering. So why don't we just unplug? But the book is not actually about unplugging as I read the book. The book is really about caring. And if you read the book, what the book says is we've got to stop being distracted by the brand names that we wear, being distracted by the latest thing that we see on the internet, being distracted by the Kardashians and celebrities. Isn't it funny how I know people who refer to Jennifer Aniston as Jen? People who have never met Jennifer Aniston. And the book encourages us to get focused on what matters and make a difference in our lives and each other's lives. Buzzwords. And I'm going to talk about a word, engagement. And we all use buzzwords. We say it's all good, even though sometimes it's bad. Some things are good and some things are bad, but we say it's all good. It's a little bit like whistling through the graveyard. We say it is what it is. We say that, but as unionists, we know that that isn't the case. We know that it isn't what it is. We know that it is what we're going to make it. It isn't what it is, because we're going to make it better. In the business world, you hear phrases like, it's time to drill down. In the Alberta, you hear this phrase because we talk about the oil industry. So we can't talk about something, we've got to drill down. There has to be sort of this reference to the oil industry. I hear negotiators look at me who try to sound fancy and say, on a go-forward basis. And I look at them and I go, you mean from now on? They're just words. But words can mean something, and words can matter. And I know you don't believe this, but in order to stay as profoundly handsome and fit as I am, I go to the gym for the odd time. More recently, the odd time. Don't laugh. And I was outside the World Health Club, and I was looking at the window, and the sign said, one of Canada's most engaged workplaces. Because I'm here to talk to you about this word engagement and member engagement. And this is a phrase that you're hearing at our union and elsewhere in the labor movement. And I went in and I said to the young lady working at the desk, I said, are you engaged? And she kind of stared at me. And she goes, nah, they treat us like shit here. And it is a buzzword. Sobeys used it on Monday when I'm off negotiating the Sobeys agreement. Who's here from my Sobeys bargaining committee? Strong people who weren't the least bit scared. You don't need me. These people stood up and faced the company's $500 an hour lawyer and told them the way it was and the way it was going to be, and they had no problem with it. Our members are extraordinary, smart people. All of you are, and that's why you're here. And you should take pride in your career and in your union job. I'm pretty sick and tired of people who demean the work that our members do, bringing food to the tables of Canadians, work that you should be proud of. Engagement. Well, there's the dictionary definition. What is it? Well, apparently it comes from the French word, and I heard someone speak earlier with the French accent, and I don't speak French, engagé, which means a pledge or a moral commitment. And we all know someone who's engaged, they're pledged to something, they're enthusiastic about doing something, they're committed to doing something. And engagement, membership engagement is a feeling. It is very hard to define. It is about being animated. It is about living, breathing, talking, interacting with other people in color, not in black and white. And unionists have humility. Unionists are humble people. We know that we are no better than anybody else, but in saying that, we also know that corporate leaders are no better than us. And it is not good to be timid. An engaged person is not timid. And because you're not timid does not mean that you lack humility. It means that you're strong and brave and prepared to speak up for yourself and each other. And the world we live in is a hard world, isn't it? This is a world where it's easy to be disengaged, to not give a fuck. Some have given up. People are confused. People are feeling considerable anxiety. And you feel this out there. And what is the evidence of that? Well, there's the chart. You gotta have a chart. Corporate profits have gone up. CEO pay has gone up. Worker productivity is skyrocketed. We're all busting it. Over the last 30 years, 40 years, wages have stayed relatively the same when adjusted for inflation. Okay? How have we made up the difference? We rev ourselves up on $5 cups of coffee. We go to casinos and live the dream. Our credit cards are maxed out, and when I was a young boy, I looked at my mom as I sat on the green shag rug in a black and white television, and I saw an ad for something called ChargeX Visa and MasterCharge. And we'd never had these before. And I said to Mom, what's that about? And she said, well, first of all, look at your garage, because there's something in your left nostril. I said, garage? She goes, yeah, your nose. And then I laughed. and then she said, well, I guess you're going to be able to pay for stuff and then pay for it later. Oh, and now we have record debt. So we're revved up, we're trying to cope, we live our lives on we live our lives looking at this little box. Because we don't have any time, the average Canadian couple works 110 hours per week. In 1975, the average Canadian couple worked about 75 hours per week. 45 hours per week. And the average Canadian couple today works 110 hours per week. That's how productive we are. And we're making them rich, and we're working harder, and the CEO profits are going up, and our wages are not going up, with the exception of unionized workers who make 20 and 30% more, but it's not good enough, is it? There are people in this room who are struggling with a union job, not enough hours, wage isn't good enough, benefits aren't good enough. And we deserve better. Working people deserve better, and our union is committed to fighting for something better. Almost half of Canadians are less than $200 away from being financially insolvent. Okay, almost half of Canadians are close to bankruptcy. Almost half of this country. Average hourly wages haven't budged in 40 years. CEO pay is at historical levels. And so we turn to the political atmosphere to see if there's an answer. And there's this guy who's debating with a porn star on Twitter. Okay? Not terribly encouraging. She's calling him tiny and he's calling her horseface. And so we want to unplug even more. Jason Kinney. Oh, he knows what's up. He knows that the way to ensure that profits keep going higher and CEO power gets greater and their remuneration gets better is to make sure people don't have a union. In fact, he tweeted about his own staff, forcing them to work midnight and saying it's a good thing they don't have a union because he knows we're a force to be reckoned with. The World Health Organization now says that depression is the world's #1 cause of disability, because people are disengaging in the middle of this. They're disengaging. And it's hard to think about leadership. It's hard to think about leadership when you're feeling the anxiety associated with this. But by God, it's time for leadership, isn't it? That's what you are, and that's why you're here. It's time for leadership, isn't it? We are the Food and Commercial Workers Union, and it's our job to put food on the tables of our members. And we are commercial workers, and commerce is about a fair paycheck so you can make a living. And the potential in this room, we have the potential to be extraordinary. Everyone in this room does. Slacktivism. Don't be a slacktivist. Okay? What is a slacktivist? You're all activists. Well, a slacktivist goes online and they like and they share and they sign a petition. But engagement is about more than that. You need to do that, but you need to do more than that. And some of you, when you applied for this conference, you said that one of your heroes was Dr. Martin Luther King. It's important to be reminded that Dr. Martin Luther King was a trade unionist and was assassinated on the way to a picket line in Memphis, where he was going to stand shoulder to shoulder with workers who were fighting for a decent life as sanitation workers. But you know, behind that story was another story of an ordinary person that I recently read about. Her name was Joanne Robinson. Joanne Robinson and Dr. Martin Luther King called for a boycott of the buses in Montgomery, Alabama. And you remember the story of Rosa Parks. She wouldn't give up her seat to a white person. African Americans wanted the right to sit at the front of the bus. And Dr. Martin Luther King gave an eloquent speech about the importance of boycotting the bus system. There were women behind the scenes. Women behind the scenes. And women get shit done, don't they? I get up and I give a speech about women get shit done. And Joanne Robinson was staying up all night photocopying leaflets to boycott the buses in Montgomery, Alabama. And that boycott, through her organizational efforts, which had gone on for months, resulted in the bus companies folding and African Americans could sit wherever they wanted on the bus. And that was the work of an ordinary system. An ordinary person, rather. The work of an ordinary person who was engaged, who reached for something extraordinary. For while we celebrate in this room that we are ordinary people, I eat Captain Crunch before I go to bed. I like watching The Walking Dead. I put, as Douglas says, my pants on one leg at a time, just like every rich person. We have the ability to be extraordinary and make a difference in this world for working people, and we have made a difference, and there is hope. With leadership, there is hope. The energy of engagement brings hope, and Alberta has made the biggest strides as child poverty rates have dropped across Canada, frankly, under the current government. The current government has created a province where children are not suffering in poverty anywhere near the levels they were before. Brothers and sisters, a $15 minimum wage. What does that mean for you? Well, you may not have gotten a wage increase, but when I go negotiate with you at the bargaining table, the new starting point is $15. Which is way better than a starting point of $11 or $12 of the minimum wages that we see elsewhere in this country. And that is an awesome starting point that's going to help all of us. Internationally, I attended a women's march in Chicago You couldn't even move. There were so many women there, it was not a march. It was people standing together saying, we're not going to take it, and we're not going to be demeaned, and women saying that you're going to pay us a fair and equal wage for what we do and treat us with the same respect that you treat everybody else in the world. It's just as simple as that. I was sure proud to be there. And in our union, Local 1118, a special welcome to members from Local 1118. I had a nice chat with this wonderful woman, Kathy Campbell, the other day. How a little Alberta union helps temporary foreign workers become Canadian. Because there are many of you who aren't from little prairie cities and aren't white male guys like me, but sophisticated people who came from the other side of the world trying to build a better life for their family and their children, and it went to do the work that Canadians need them to do. Proud union members who are making a difference in this country, and they are from elsewhere, and Local 1118 fought to give them a path to stay in this country. You can go to the next slide because I'm running out of time. Si se puede. I don't speak Spanish. Sama sama kaya kaya, or is it kaya kaya sama sama? Increasingly. Pardon? Can we all say it together? Sama sama kaya kaya? Kaya. I do not speak Tagalog. But what I do know, as I've done this for so many years, is part of engagement is listening to, talking to, and representing people who are different than we are. Listening to what they have to say, and listening to the stories, and listening to their language. That's Elsa, standing up for workers at Bethany Care in Red Deer. And there is so much hope because people are engaged in standing up. Good Groceries, standing in front of Safeway stores, reminding Safeway, telling Safeway to be a good grocery store that pays their workers fairly. We're doing this. At Old Dutch Potato Chips, workers stood on the line for months to ensure the security of their union. At the Real Canadian Superstore, people went on strike to tell the billionaire Galen Weston that, hey, in case you never noticed, it's your employees that are making you rich. In case you never noticed, buddy. Brothers and sisters, in arriving at this conference, we gave you an invitation and we called it something. We said, it's yours. This was an invitation for engagement, an invitation for passion, to care about each other, to share this union, to be humble, but to be strong and to be bold. And we all know an engaged person. The people in this room are engaging. And if you go back to your workplaces and if you are engaging, this will be contagious. And we will take a hold of the union that belongs to us in a new way. This is an invitation to be extraordinary. Think about Dr. King, but don't forget about Joanne Robinson. Don't forget about your mother or your sister or your friend, or the people that were your heroes that you admired because they were ordinary people who rose to the extraordinary. Dream, act, be a unionist. Don't do it in black and white. Do it in color. I invite you to share this union with me, with Local 401, and with other workers. I thank you for your time.